I've always thought that people getting divorced have done three things that sort of put them in that place. The first is that most people get married to an idea of a person, and they have who the idea they are with is, and it doesn't always match the person that they're with. And I'll hear that because they'll come in here and they'll say, oh, he changed so much, or she was always so much more like this. And I'm looking at the situation going, are you sure? Because this is the list of complaints you've given me from what's gone on in the months leading up, and this person's been pretty consistent. If I had to guess, I think most people marry the person that they hope would be their perfect mate and don't spend enough time making sure that the person who's actually saying I do to them is that perfect mate. So communication is key. Talking through what you're going through, talking through what you want, talking through things with your spouse, are important. And part of that is, and this is what I would tell you is the second lesson, part of that is we tend to hold resentment over certain things. And they can be little things. I don't necessarily know what they are in a per family basis, but there's little sacrifices we make along the way. And we tend to get angrier. And I think one of the shame or one of the difficulties about divorce is people who get divorced are leaving someone when they're at their worst. It's very rare people come in here for a contentious divorce and they are their best self. They're usually some version of themselves they're not going to be proud of, and that's okay. We're human beings, we're allowed to be emotional. But I find that you're your worst version of yourself. And the person you're being the worst version to says, I'm out, I'm done. And you say, okay, let's be done. And you separate, and now you have to worry about kids together or finances together. And you see this mostly with kids. All of the things I thought were bad about you because of how you were acting, my spouse, not you obviously, because of how my spouse was acting right at the time of divorce are things that I keep. I assume it's that person. The reality in life is most of us, when we do things that we regret or that we're not proud of, and we stumble and we fall, we get up, we dust ourselves off, and we become better. If that happens to people who are divorcing, generally one of the spouse who left, doesn't see it because they left, and they hold on to that image. So when they have disputes that arise about the kids, they're not having a dispute with the spouse as that spouse is. They tend to be grounded in the idea of who that spouse was when they were leaving them, when that spouse was absolutely at their worst.
That's the last image.
That is, and you keep that. And I think that it's very difficult, and I'm not a therapist, this is not our job to do, but I think it's very difficult I shouldn't say difficult's the wrong word. I think there's a part of the process that requires you to move on, and because of the unique nature of a divorce fight, which is, I'm done, I'm out of this relationship, you don't remember it. I mean, this would be like imagining that someone who said something nasty to you in high school is still a person who is a bully or says nasty things without growing and recognizing maybe that person had self-esteem issues, maybe something was going on bad at home. People are people, we're flawed, we do things that we're not proud of, and we grow, and you never see that growth.
Right.
Which brings me to my third little interesting learning tip. There's a famous expression. Have you heard this? There's three sides to every story.
Yes.
His, hers, and the truth.
Yes.
I don't actually agree with it. I know I'm breaking from the norms on this, but I actually think what you have is one story, and then the lens through which he sees it, and the lens through which she sees it. I think very ironically, people who have happy, good, functional marriages have the ability to pick up the lens of the other person and look at a situation through that and say, oh, and now I'm seeing it from your point of view. I think very often when we're in court litigating, I think most disputes can be described very accurately as they can't pick it up and see it from the other person's perspective. I don't think it's his side of the story or her side of the story. I think he prioritizes this, and this. She prioritizes that, and they can't get on the same page as to maybe my priorities aren't right. And you're having a judge call it. Think about going to private school. A really benign interaction. And let's take a healthy married couple, not someone going through divorce. Maybe mom thinks private school is better because you get better education, you have better teachers, you have higher quality, whatever it is. And dad thinks, yeah, but you're putting yourself in a certain class of people that go to private schools. That's not the real world, so you're not getting that real world experience.
Like a lack of diversity, maybe.
I wasn't thinking so much lack of diversity of culture, just lack of diversity. You're not seeing all families. You're seeing only those families who can afford to send their kids to private school from wherever they are, but it's just more of a classist thing than a diversity thing. Neither here nor there. I mean, diversity is the same point.
Right.
But what you end up having is dad's point is valid. Mom's point is valid. To mom, quality education is the most important thing. To dad, being able to exist in the real world, not just in the halls of private school, is a very important thing. Maybe that's what he brought up. Who knows what the issues are? In a healthy marriage, they talk about that and find a way to compromise through it. Maybe they do the private school, but they go to public rec sports. Maybe, I don't know. There's a half a dozen compromises. But suddenly when mom and dad are getting divorced and going to court, dad is a terrible father for not prioritizing the kids' education, and mom is an out-of-touch elitist who doesn't want the kids to be like everyone else. And both people present this to the judge, and they mislead themselves by saying, well, there's three sides to every story, his, hers, and the truth. The reality is, you just disagree. And what I like about our job is, if we're able to spot that early enough, maybe we can help them figure out what the disagreement is and pursue a compromise. Because I can promise you, the judge is going to say, private school, not private school. And one of them will think they're right, and one of them will think they're wrong. And maybe this harkens back to something in the relationship. Maybe mom thought dad was someone who prioritizes education and just didn't hear what he said before they got married as to that he doesn't. I don't know. But that's sort of a life lesson about how court can sometimes work, and how most of the time the disputes I think we have in court are really people aren't seeing eye to eye about what their problems are. They're looking at a problem through different lenses, and they just can't get their hands around or their head around why the other person's lens could possibly be valid.
Well, a few moments ago you mentioned about how one of the keys in a relationship, a healthy marriage, is communication. What are the other keys? There's eventually a breakdown at some point during the marriage that leads someone coming to our door.
Sure, and they can be any number of things. I mean, there's no one reason that drives people here. I've heard everything from PG stuff to not so PG stuff, and to a degree, in one of the topics I want to touch on later, there is some aspect of domestic violence. But I think in order to be in a committed relationship, there was that movie, I can't think of the name of it, I'll get it for you. There's a quote in that movie that's fantastic, that a committed relationship is one that you get up and choose every day because that's what you choose. And I think if you're choosing it because it's what you want, that's probably going to lead to a happy marriage. I think if you're choosing it because I'm financially stuck, because I don't want to make my kids unhappy, because I don't want to admit to myself I made a mistake and married the wrong person, because I don't want to make someone sad that I'm leaving, I think when you start compromising on those choices, you're on the road to a divorce. Not necessarily unrecoverably so, but that's, what I see here most often.